The Vanishing of Brian Shaffer, a mystery that refuses to die. On the night of March 31st, 2006, Brian Shaffer entered a bar in Columbus, Ohio. He had some drinks, laughed with friends, exchanged numbers with a stranger, and then vanished. Not into a car, not down the street. He vanished as if swallowed by the very air around him. In the nearly 2 decades since, no trace has ever been found. The case of Brian Shaffer is not just a disappearance, it's a haunting riddle that refuses to fade. A black hole at the center of 1,000 theories. For those who look too long into it, it begins to look back. Let's retrace the final known hours of a man who walked into the night and never came out.
Bring them home.
A Friday like any other, almost. It was the start of spring break 2006. Brian Shaffer, 27 years old and a second-year medical student at The Ohio State University, had just finished a grueling round of exams. And yet, he wanted to go out. His father, Randy Shaffer, took him to dinner at an Outback steakhouse. It would be the last time he'd ever see his son. I didn't understand why he wanted to go out, Randy would later say. He seemed so tired, like he just needed to rest. But Brian didn't rest. After dinner, he met up with his friend Clint Florence to celebrate. The destination, the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a local bar nestled in the heart of Columbus. He invited his brother Derek and sister-in-law Maureen to join them. They declined, choosing instead to catch a comedy show. It was one of those small choices that echoes in retrospect, one twist of fate in a night already thick with them. Calls, drinks, and a final escalator ride. At around 10 p.m., Brian called his girlfriend, Alexis Wagner. She was also a medical student and had traveled to Toledo to visit her family ahead of their planned Monday trip to Miami. That vacation was supposed to be a break from the stress, a gift, a new chapter. They never made it. After the call, Brian and Clint bounced between bars in the short North District. Shots, laughs, the thrum of music, and neon. Sometime around midnight, they met up with Meredith Reed, a friend of Clint's. She drove the pair back to the Ugly Tuna Saloona for one last round. Security footage caught them riding the escalator at 1:15 a.m., Brian leading the way, Clint and Meredith just behind. The timestamp is burned into the timeline. From there, the story begins to dissolve. Minutes later, Brian is seen again lingering in a small alcove near a service door, just off camera, shadowed and beige. He appears to be speaking with two young women, Amber Ruck and Brighton Zaccaro. Brighton would later say Brian flirted with her, even kissed her neck. She went to the restroom. When she came out, Brian was gone. Gone. A man erased by time and space. When the bar closed shortly after 2 a.m., Clint and Meredith waited outside. They assumed Brian had wandered off, perhaps headed home. His apartment was only a few blocks away. That was just Brian, independent, occasionally unpredictable. But that night, Brian didn't come home. He missed his flight to Miami, missed calls, missed time, and by Monday, he was reported missing. Police went to work. They reviewed hours of security footage. Every person who entered and exited the Ugly Tuna that night was accounted for. Every person except Brian. Somehow, in a bar surrounded by security cameras, he had disappeared without a trace. Dogs were brought in, the surrounding buildings researched, sewers probed, alleys examined. No sign, no blood, no clothing, nothing. His car was still parked 6 blocks away, his bank account untouched, his credit cards dormant, his phone silent, the phantom ring. For weeks, Alexis called Brian's number every day, hoping, pleading. Then once it rang, just once. It was a sound she would never forget, a heartbeat in the silence. The phone company Singular later claimed it was likely a glitch, a rogue signal bouncing off a tower in Hilliard, a suburb 14 miles away. But it was never confirmed. That ring became one of many haunting details that cling to the case like cobwebs. Alexis never gave up. She papered campus with flyers, wandered riverbanks at night with a flashlight, searched dumpsters, knocked on doors. Grief hardened into obsession, and still nothing. Echoes and theories. What could make a person disappear inside a building surrounded by surveillance cameras? Theories bloomed like fungi in the dark. One suggests Brian was intoxicated and fell into a nearby construction zone, possibly slipping past cameras and suffering a fatal accident, but no body was ever found, and the site was thoroughly searched. Another posits suicide. Brian's mother had passed away just weeks earlier from a rare disease. Some speculated that grief may have overwhelmed him, but most who take their own lives want to be found. Brian left behind no note, no message, only confusion. Others point to the idea that he ran away. After all, Brian had received a $20,000 life insurance payout after his mother's death. He'd once written online that being a doctor was just a job until he could start a band. Could he have used the money to vanish on purpose? But then, why make vacation plans? Why talk about proposing to Alexis during their trip? It doesn't add up. Then there's Clint. He was one of the last to see Brian alive. He was with him that entire night until he wasn't, and when questioned by police, Clint lawyered up. He refused to take a polygraph test, refused to speak further, even years later. When contacted by private investigators and journalists, he declined to talk. He's the only person who claimed Brian went back into the bar that night. No one else could confirm that. Brian's brother Derek and girlfriend Alexis both believe Clint knows more than he's revealed, but without evidence, speculation remains just that, a whisper in the dark. Tragedy strikes again. 2 years after Brian vanished, his father, Randy, was walking through his yard during a storm when a tree branch fell and struck him. He was killed instantly. As if one disappearance wasn't cruel enough, the universe took another piece of the Shaffer family. Then came the cruelest twist of all. Under Rye's obituary, someone posted a comment online. Dad, I love you, Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands. It was signed as if from beyond the veil. The message was traced back to a public computer in Franklin County. A hoax, a taunt, a sick joke. But for a fleeting moment, hope flickered, and then it died again. The silence that screams. Today, Alexis is married. She has a family, but she still keeps a small corner of her heart locked away, sealed in 2006. Derek Shaffer remains the last surviving member of his immediate family. He too has found ways to go on, but the question lingers in his eyes, etched into every year that passes without answers. The Columbus police have never closed the case. Detective John Hurst once said, "Is Brian alive? There is a possibility, but the probabilities that he isn't are just as great. Was he murdered? There is no evidence of foul play. Did he take his own life? That's probably the least likely. Most people who commit suicide want to be found. So, what happened to Brian Shaffer? No evidence, no witnesses, no digital footprint. Brian didn't just disappear, he slipped through a crack in reality, left behind a hole that even time cannot fill. Some believe he's still out there, living under a new name, in a new country, free of the burdens that weighed him down. Others believe he died that night, perhaps in a tragic accident or at someone's hands. But perhaps the most chilling possibility is also the simplest, that someone out there knows exactly what happened and they've kept the secret for nearly 20 years. Bars close, lights fade, but mysteries don't die. They linger. Brian Shaffer's disappearance isn't just an unsolved case, it's a ghost story with no ending, a riddle still waiting for a final piece. And until that piece is found, Brian's shadow will continue to haunt the alleys of Columbus and the minds of those who remember the man who walked into a bar and never walked out. Thank you for watching my coverage of this case. If you have any information, please contact the detectives assigned. If you enjoyed my coverage, please subscribe. Thank you for your time, stay safe, and look out for one another. Bye.